Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collingwood for YouTube, Resident _of Collingwood for BitChute. And I'm doing 3 videos tonight. I'm not going to do these in the exact order I mentioned on Twitter, but I'm going to start these now. This one's my original versus sequel, Friday the 13th, the 1980 original versus its sequel, 1981's Friday the 13th Part 2. You know, the differences in these movies are real simple. One movie has a woman for a killer, one has Jason for a killer. The other is a whodunit, and that's where I lead into the first one. You know, Friday the 13th Part 1 is a whodunit built around a slasher to me. This is a slasher, but this is a whodunit slasher. It's who is the killer. It's almost like you, the audience, have to figure out who the killer is. You're the detective, and that's sort of where the noir comes in for this a bit too, which I love. I'm a huge noir fan. If you can give me some noir and horror, I'm good. I'm all for it. This movie starts off with camp counselors singing Kumbaya, and one man and one woman go off. The two, they're both camp counselors, and they literally go off and try to sneak off to have sex. They don't really have sex, they make out, but they get killed. And you don't see who does the killings, but it's somebody they're familiar with and somebody they know, because they seem more scared that they got caught than anything else. So, and the killings happened in the 50s, which I was always... What's amazing to me is this movie time jumps in it within itself. You go from the 50s to 1980, and I'm just like, holy shit, what a jump. Like, what the fuck? That was my reaction when I first saw this movie. I'm thinking, wow, they really jumped forward in this movie to sort of, now you're set in 1980, and those murders happened, and you're asking yourself questions. Was the killer caught? Was the murder solved? And obviously you find out no. But then you meet Annie, who's walking along, and she's got a backpack and camping equipment in there. She goes into town, and she asks for a ride to Camp Crystal Lake. And everybody just looks at her like, you're crazy. You're crazy. For this, are you crazy look. But this truck driver gives her a ride. He says, yeah, I'll take you up to the crossroads. And she goes, that would be great. And she actually I like how she introduces herself to the truck driver. I thought that was real neat. So they leave, and as they're leaving, they're confronted by a local named Ralph, or who the locals call Crazy Ralph, and he tells her, you're doomed, you're all doomed, it's got a death curse. And, the truck driver tells him, shut up. But when the truck driver and Annie get into his truck, and he starts driving away with her, he starts talking to her. And he starts asking her questions, and he goes, did he tell you? Did your boss, Steve Christie, tell you? Oh, I'd be cooking for some kids, mate, inner city kids. And he shakes his head, no, about the murders. And that's where I was shocked, because I really love the townspeople somewhat in this. They're not a-holes. They give a shit, and they don't really want people going up to that campground, but they can't physically stop you from doing it, but they can warn you. And that's what he's doing. He's trying to tell her, look, that he tells her that there's been fire, that a boy drowned, there's been fires and murders, and no one knows who did any of them. And she still decides to go up, and he just shakes his head at her. He's in disbelief. Well, Annie should have listened. Annie gets killed, and that sort of lets you know they did not catch the killer. And you just start wondering, who is this killer? Who is this killer throughout this whole movie? And all whodunits have one thing really in common with their killers. They're not revealed till the end or near the end. And that's one thing Friday the 13th honors. I mean, Scream does the same goddamn thing. You really, with whodunits, you always reveal the killer last. You always reveal this is your killer here. And they're the focus of your movie. And that's something, the one thing I love about Friday the 13th is that it did have a woman killer. You had Betsy Palmer play Pamela Voorhees. And you almost see her, you see the backside of her, but you're not sure who it is. Go into the cabin, and I've always held Friday the 13th up high as I can. As it's a 10 to me, this movie. I love it a lot. I love Betsy Palmer's performance. I love how Betsy Palmer, she's able to use a kid's voice. She goes, "Help me, help me," and because she played Peter Pan on Broadway. I love the fact that Steve Christy, when he's killed by her, it's so interesting because he knows who he doesn't. Steve Christy, when it comes to the murders of Camp Crystal Lake, is ignorant. He really is. I mean, think about it. The people he brings up there and he hires, he doesn't really tell them what the hell happened. And maybe he feels he doesn't have to, but to me that's always been a lack of responsibility by Steve Christy. But yet, when he's at the cafe, he tells the lady who's serving him, "I got to get back because they're inexperienced. They're babes in the woods in every sense of the words, meaning they're inexperienced. They don't know too much what they're doing." Even though he does show them he shows them one of them how to operate the generator. I want to say Bill is the one he shows. When Steve Christy gets killed, he's walking up to the camp sign, and the flashlight flashes in his face, and he says, "Who is it?" "Oh, it's you. What are you doing out in this mess?" He's not scared. He's not fucking scared at all. He just walks right up to her. He trusted Pamela Voorhees with his life. He did not expect her as a murderer or anything. But again, I go back to, I really think Steve Christy he had to be ignorant to these murders. He had to be really not worried about it, because if you're worried about it, why would you even open this campground? And he just seemed to not care. Like, no, I'm going to have this campground. And I think it had something to do with his family, really, too, owning the camp. That had a lot to do with it, too, I think. So, the big reveal comes when Betsy Palmer pulls up in the truck. This whole movie, you've only heard about the boy drowning one time. And that was from the truck driver. Now you get the boy's name from the mother, which I agree. They didn't do this wrong in a sense, because Pamela should be the one to mention her son's name. And she explains that her son Jason drowned and no one was watching him. And today, Friday the 13th, is his birthday. And that's when she tries to kill Alice. So, but Alice, you know, doesn't succumb to her. Alice cuts Pamela's head off. To me, Pamela Voorhees should be top five definitely of slasher killers. But I think Pamela gets lost in all the shuffle. And I think a lot of the reason Pamela has sort of become, at times, an afterthought to some fans or to people in general is because of how the original movie ended. And, you know, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Think about it. Jason, to me, he wasn't really heavily mentioned in this movie until Pamela shows up. So it's not like Jason is a main focus of this movie from a standpoint of mentioning. He's not mentioned until Pamela shows up. And again, she's showing up to be the reveal to, hey, this is your killer. Holy shit, a middle-aged woman who was a mother. She dies, you know, it's over, right? Alice goes into the canoe. She goes out to the lake, to Crystal Lake. And here's Jason. Now, mind you, this is a dream sequence. Jason jumps out of the water. I don't hate this moment in this movie. I don't hate the moment itself. But I've always felt right there, that moment in this movie is when Jason became the face of the franchise. That right there is when Jason became the franchise, because even when I was growing up, when people would ask who was the killer in Friday the 13th, people would answer Jason. And I remember saying, no, it was Jason's mother. Well, yeah, but he pops up out of the water. Yeah, but that's a dream sequence. He doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't kill anybody to the sequels. And what you have to explain is, you know, in 1980, Jason will not be a child still, you know. But that's the craziness of Friday the 13th. It's a really good movie. It's a fun movie. I love it. I love Betsy Palmer. I love Pamela Voorhees to death. But what really gets me is they chose to... How do I word this? It's almost like they're playing a game of upsmanship or grandstanding within their own film, sort of. Here's a king, which would be Pamela. Oh no, here's an ace, which would be Jason coming up out of the water. They're sort of outdoing themselves in their own movie, which is crazy. And what I mean by grandstanding is, I don't feel Jason was needed to pop up out of the water. I don't. I feel the way the movie ended. Look, even if Jason didn't come up out of the water, you knew Jason was going to come in the sequels. Just by the way Pamela was mentioning him, she's out of her fucking mind. She's gone. She's crazy. I can't sit here and say Michael Myers is crazy, but Pamela Voorhees, that girl is 1000% batshit crazy. And she is. She's just out of her mind. Again, hopefully I get all three of these videos done. I'm already yawning. For me, this movie gets a 10. I love it. I just feel Jason popping up out of the water became the imagery of this franchise, and it really became the imagery of this movie. I mean, seriously, when you look at Friday the 13th, what's the first thing you honest to God think of? And to me, even me, I love Pamela, but anytime I think of Friday the 13th, the original, I think of Jason coming up out of the goddamn water. And I do. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you because it would do no good. I'm not a liar. My thing of this is Betsy Palmer does deserve more credit than what she gets. I mean, she doesn't, to me, she does not get enough. So that's my thoughts on the original. Now, let's put it up against its sequel, 1981, Friday the 13th Part 2. You have Amy Steele playing Jenny. Some consider her the best final girl in Friday the 13th history. We'll see. Here's things I like about this movie. I like how this starts. You literally start this with Jason. You start this with Jason walking, you know. I love this. It's creepy. Is Jason Voorhees a Michael Myers clone? Yeah, he is in every way. I agree with what John Carpenter has said for years. Yeah, Jason's always been a Michael clone. And that's sort of what separates him and Pamela. Pamela isn't. Jason is. Jason kills Alice, who was the girl who cut his mother's head off in the beginning of this movie. Now, what's Jason do after that? He goes back to Camp Crystal Lake, and he just lives in the woods. That's what he's been doing all this time. He's been living in the woods. That's what he's been doing. He didn't really drown. He's been living in the goddamn woods. I was always curious that I'm surprised this town and the state did not fight them harder to not have the camp reopened, considering murders just happened a year ago. Because the cops are not, especially the sheriff, I guess, is not happy that they're there. And he makes it known to him, too, after he catches the kids over in Camp Crystal Lake where they weren't supposed to be, which is on the other side of the lake they're camping on. But I think that there's sins I wish they would have did a little more in this. The one thing I wish they would have did a little more in is how exactly do the town people now feel that a murder happened more recently, because the murders just happened last year. We don't really get that too much, or really at all. To me, the cop, you could say, well, the cop's a representation of the town people. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but I just don't feel that way. I feel he's more representing the law of the town itself and just saying, hey, you know, you shouldn't be here. But Paul had a great reputation, and so did the people who were there. That's the one thing I love about this movie, that where Steve Christian once said the people who were with him were babes in the woods. These people aren't. They're very experienced in camp counseling and actually being camp counselors, which I love. I really like the character of Paul. I found him interesting because Paul makes a note to tell the campfire story of Jason, but then he has his friends scare everybody, and he just tells people, Jason drowned and he's dead, and his mother got cut off. And Camp Crystal Lake is off limits, so don't go there. And obviously the two counselors do, and they get in trouble by Paul. Well, the cop catches him, but still. Sorry, guys. I really... and after really Paul says that, and he, the camp counselors, he's made aware that they went there without his permission. So he says, "Oh, you're staying. Basically, you're going to stay behind." And some people stay behind with them, and the rest of them, the biggest part of the group, goes out on a night in the town. I really love the bar sequence in part two because it's so good between Paul and Jenny, and Jenny saying, "What if, what if Jason were alive?" And Paul's like, "Jason's a legend, Jenny, a legend," you know. And I love just the conversation between them two. It's so goddamn good. It's criminal. The acting of this in this movie, to me, it's underrated. Especially the dialogue, it does not get enough praise for me. That's another thing I love about this movie. I love all the kill sequences; they're really well done. Sack Mash Jason, I like it. I thought it was creepy. It was edgy, especially for its time. Um, they I like how he uses a variety of weapons to kill his victims in this. I thought that was unique and interesting because, up until this point, I was used to seeing Michael just with a knife or a scalpel. But no, here's Jason. He's using all sorts of weapons, which is fun. To me, what do I give this movie? I give this movie a 9.5. It was really close to choose between these two. I gave my nod to the original for this reason. I love Amy Steele, and I think her character Jenny is great. But this is sort of the problem I have with Friday the 13th as a sequel go along. The only character they ever really bring back is Tommy. 3 times they bring Tommy back. And I don't have a problem with them bringing Tommy back, but if you really had this good final girl and Amy Steele, if you really believed in Jenny as a character, and you should have, then you should have brought her back another time. I think one more time would have did it. The Jenny coming back would have been interesting. But they don't do that at all. Where does she rank for my final girl list? Is she in my top 3? For Friday the 13th, she would definitely be, I would say, up there. She's definitely would be my number 2. No, not my number 1. My number one final girl would be Alice, because Alice didn't have the experience that Jenny had. Jenny had being a camp counselor experience. Alice didn't. I give my nod to Alice, not taking anything away from Jenny. Amazing character. I really love both movies, really. This was hard for me to pick one over the other. I think the one thing most interesting to me about Friday the 13th franchise, they do delve into the superstitious factor on the Friday the 13th lore, but again, it's not a whole lot all the time throughout this franchise. Maybe you could say everybody was just unlucky because they were at Camp Crystal Lake on Jason's birthday. Yeah, I guess you could say that if you wanted to throw that in there. But again, I love both these movies. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Like, share, comment, subscribe.